After waiting 6 months and dealing with countless cancelled orders, I finally had the missing piece to the touring puzzle. If you remember back to October of last year, I removed the right engine covering plate as part of an engine bay cleanup. It was meant to be just a cleanup, but as usual I got carried away and removed a major piece of the car. Rookie mistake number 1. I removed the panel before I had the replacement to go back in. The second rookie mistake was that I didn't check to see if the part I needed was available. It wasn't. Lesson learnt. Back to the present day, the Touring has just been sat in the carport, gathering dust for the past 6 months, the poor thing. I gave it a once over with the foam gun before I moved it back into the workshop. Much better. The engine bay was then cleaned with degreasers and some microfibers to make sure it didn't get too wet. I vacuumed the loose dirt and sorted out a few things that needed putting back together again or removing so I could replace them when I fully restored the car. I treated the surface rust with Genelite rust remover and sprayed the bare metal parts with iron cladding to keep them rust free for now. And there we go, much cleaner, ready to work on. First thing to do was to remove this ugly bumper shock. I then got to work on the rust inside of the chassis, and also a few areas that needed new paint. Once all of the visible rust was gone, I treated any leftover rust with converter. One final going over with the rotary tool and some wire wheel bits, and I was ready to focus on the missing parts. I needed to remove any leftover metal from when I cut out the spot welds. I sealed the bare metal with zinc-rich weld-through primer, ready for the new piece. So here's the old one, and here's the new one for comparison. Time for a test fit. It didn't fit. Where's the hammer? After faffing around for a while, I realised I had forgotten to grind down some spot welds, which meant it couldn't sit correctly. I saw to those and it went straight in. I marked the holes I needed to drill to be able to plug weld it to the chassis. Each hole was centre punched and drilled with a hand drill, starting with a small bit and working up to the size I wanted. I wasn't sure, nor could I find out if this part was coated in weld through primer or just normal paint, so I removed the paint in the areas I was going to weld just to be sure. And that's it, ready to be welded in place. But before we do, I have a quick word from today's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon have been making earbuds for a while now, and are backed by the likes of Snoop Dogg and Carly B. The everyday E25s are their latest and greatest model yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass than ever, and a compact and comfortable noise isolating design. They make for an all-round great package. So Bluetooth is obviously the way to go these days. Between travelling and working in the workshop all day like I do, wires just aren't an option. But you've got to find a pair of wireless earbuds with good battery life and great performance. These Raycons tick both of those boxes. 6 hours on a single charge, times 4 charges with the wireless charging case, means 24 hours and really solid performance. I cannot tell the difference between these and the top audio brands, and these are literally half the price. Another thing I like about these E25s is the fitment. They sit in my ears so well that I forgot I even had them in several times. They also have everyone covered, with a variety of tip sizes in the box and 7 colours to choose from. So if you're looking for a pair of earbuds, now is the best time to get them. You can get an additional 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/restorit. That's buyraycon.com/restorit to get these bad boys for less than $70. You can find that link at the top of the video description. Thank you for supporting those who support us, and thanks to Raycon for supporting the channel. Okay, back to the touring. After a bit of fiddling, it felt and looked like it was in the right place. I decided to bend these tabs over first to keep things in place and give me the correct height for the rest of it. I used the other side as a comparison. It was pretty much exactly where the other side was. I was happy enough to start welding it in. It always takes me a few tries to get the settings right. I don't have enough experience to know what is needed first time just yet. This part was a mixture of filling in the holes I drilled to remove the old piece, lap welding the top of the new piece in, and also plug welding the 3 holes I just drilled. Not some of my best welding. Next were these holes running the length of the piece. Only 3 holes at the back to deal with, and I've got to say this is the most fun I've had welding, even though I'm still pretty bad. The day came to an end, so I sprayed the welds just to stop them from flash rusting. The next day, I jacked up the car and removed the wheels, so I could easily get to the other side. I drilled several holes in the new metal I welded in 6 months ago, so I could plug weld it through to the new piece. Now I'm sure some of you have noticed that the new metal I added doesn't go low enough to meet the new piece. I cut and add a new piece to make everything match up at some point during this episode, but I don't think I filmed it. You'll see it when it comes though. I also plug welded the existing holes from the inside to the new piece. Next was the front part, just 2 plug welds to do here. When I start grinding, I tend to do as much as I can to keep it to a minimum throughout the day. They are ear-piercingly loud. I use a flap disc to the point it starts to touch the surrounding metal, and then finish it off with a finger sander. This is the first time I've done welding upside down, and it really did not help my already bad welding. This is some of the worst welding I've ever done. I'll go back and correct this later. But for the most part, it was in. Here's that new bit of metal I was talking about. It includes the tabs that are on the new piece. I was then ready to add fiberglass filler and hide my terrible welding. I did order some Bondo fillers, but they didn't arrive in time. This will do just fine though. I sanded it back with 80 grit sandpaper and a lot of sweat. Next was some universal filler to really smooth things out. Whilst that dried, I removed the rust on the bottom of the slam panel and treated it with some rust converter. By the time that was done, the filler was ready to be sanded back. After a huge amount of sanding, it was then ready to be seam sealed. I gave it a clean with quartz silicone remover just to make sure no dirt or dust was left over. So this is an A.N.I single component sealant applicator. It uses air to force the seam sealer out. The seam sealer I used can be found in the description. Like a lot of things on this channel, this is my first time ever using one of these guns. I had some practice off the car and it was all going well, although it was a bit hit and miss. I had forgotten to remove the plastic cap on the bottom of the tube, which meant it didn't work right at all. I decided to make a good seal and then go back to the effect afterwards. After sorting the issue, I was able to copy the rest of the sealant as best I could. I had some left over and had a quick go at spraying it on the underside as an undercoating. Going back to those terrible spot welds, I ground them down and then went again with the welder. With the sealant dry and all of the spot welds dealt with, I could now paint the new piece and the surrounding area. One forgotten spot weld to grind down and a clean with silicone remover and I was ready to paint. I started with etch primer for the bare metal parts and then used wet on wet primer. Base coat was then mixed up and 2 coats were applied. Finally, 2 coats of quartz crystal clear was applied inside the engine bay. I then gave it 60 minutes to cure under the lamp. Once it was dry, I realised how much of a better paint job this side was compared to the other one. You can see the colour difference. My spray gun wasn't working properly the last time I painted it, so I'll be painting the other side too. Still, I'm very happy with how this turned out, being my first attempt. The last thing I wanted to get done in this episode was trying out this undercoating from Carplan. As this car is going to get the full works in the future, I'm using it to experiment with, so I can take what I learn and apply it to the coupe. What would you guys go for? This sort of undercoating or the spray type I tried earlier? I'll soon be coating the whole underside of the coupe and have both options available to me. If you've got any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And there we go, all of that because I wanted to clean the engine bay. Next for the touring is one more bit of welding near the battery tray, one more coat of paint, and then I can reinstall everything including this engine and get it back on the road whilst I finish the coupe. All of a sudden I have a lot of content for Restore It, but only 2 hands to edit it together. But you can now expect weekly episodes from me every Thursday from now on either the coupe, the touring, the E30 M3 or the 1M. Not a bad lineup if you ask me. Thanks for watching, see you next time.